In the small town of Tafo in the eastern region of Ghana lived a 24-year-old young woman named Okyerewaa. Life was not easy for her and her mother, Mame Afia. After her father's death, they struggled to survive, living in a small rented house with cracked walls and a leaking roof whenever the rains came. Every morning, before the sun touched the town, mother and daughter would rise to prepare kenkey. The smell of steaming corn dough filled their tiny room as they wrapped each ball in plantain leaves, hoping to sell enough to pay rent and buy food for the next day. Though poverty weighed on them heavily, Mame Afia often reminded her daughter, "Okyerewaa, the hands that give never go empty." These words stayed in her heart. By the roadside where they sold kenkey, a madman often passed. His hair was wild, his clothes torn, and people mocked him. But whenever he stretched out his hand, Okyerewaa never hesitated. She would give him food, even when others complained that she was wasting their little income. Her kindness brought laughter and gossip from onlookers, but she never stopped. For her, giving was not about wealth, it was about humanity. The people of Tafo only saw him as a mad man, dirty, restless, and hopeless. They never imagined that behind those torn clothes and unkempt hair was a painful history tied to one of the richest families in Ghana. His real name was Aquasi, the only son of a wealthy businessman. Years ago, Aquasi had lived a life of comfort. His father was the pride of their hometown, known for his generosity and wealth. His mother, a gentle and God-fearing woman, was the light of his life. But envy is a silent killer, and in his family, envy grew like fire. When Aquasi was just a teenager, tragedy struck. His mother suddenly fell ill, and no medicine could heal her. Within weeks, she was gone. Her death shattered him. His father wept like a broken man, and Aquasi's world collapsed. But the truth did not stay hidden for long. Together, father and son traveled from one pastor to another, from one spiritualist to the next, searching for answers. The painful revelations kept returning the same. Your own family used charms to kill your wife. They want to finish you all because of the wealth you carry. The blood of greed runs deep among them. These words pierced Aquasi's heart. He could not believe it. His uncles, aunties, cousins, the very people meant to protect them, were plotting their destruction. One evening, Aquasi cried to his father, "Papa, why must it be our own blood? Why must family be our greatest enemy?" His father, with trembling lips, replied, "My son, riches can build homes, but it can also invite wolves. Never trust those who smile too easily around wealth." The family's hatred grew stronger after his mother's death. They began to plan darker things, to kill Aquasi and his father so they could inherit the vast properties, lands, and businesses. Long before the madness and the wandering streets of Tafo, Aquasi was known as a brilliant young man with a shining future. After completing university with distinction, he quickly stepped into responsibility. His father, Mr. Ankra, was a man of great wealth and vision. He owned one of the biggest wine and drinks companies in the region, and alongside it, a thriving construction company. To the surprise of many, Mr. Ankra entrusted his only son with leadership early. At just 24, Aquasi became the CEO of their construction company. He was hardworking, disciplined, and sharp-minded. Workers respected him not only because he was their boss's son, but because he treated them with fairness and humility. Yet behind all the success and admiration was a family poisoned by greed. Years before Aquasi was even born, Mr. Ankra had faced opposition from his relatives when he decided to marry the woman he loved. "Don't marry her," they warned. "She is not from our kind of family. She will bring you trouble." But Mr. Ankra loved her deeply. She was beautiful, gentle, and had a heart of gold. "I will marry her," he declared firmly, ignoring their threats and disapproval. What he didn't know was that their hatred had nothing to do with the woman herself. They did not want him to marry anyone. They wanted him to remain single and childless, so that when his time on earth was done, all his wealth, lands, and businesses would automatically fall into their hands. Marriage and children meant they would lose their grip on his inheritance. So, when he married against their wishes, bitterness consumed their hearts like fire. They began to fight the marriage spiritually. Years passed, and though the couple's love remained strong, sorrow visited them again and again. Every time his wife conceived, the joy would not last. Miscarriage after miscarriage tore their hearts apart. Each loss was heavier than the last, until their home was filled with more tears than laughter. One evening his wife wept bitterly, holding her stomach after another miscarriage. "Why us, Lord? Why can't I hold my own baby? Have I done wrong?" Mr. Ankra embraced her tightly, his own eyes filled with tears. "It is not you, my love. It is them, my family. They want us broken, but let us hold on. God has the final say." It was indeed only by the grace of God that finally, after years of pain, a child survived the battle. That child was Aquasi. He was their miracle, the answer to their prayers, the joy that lit their home. From birth, they knew he carried greatness. His brilliance in school, his discipline in business, and his compassion toward people showed he was no ordinary child. But the same greatness that made his parents proud made his extended family furious. For as long as Aquasi lived, he would be a target, because his very existence meant the wealth they desired would never be theirs. And so, the unseen war never ended. The same hands that celebrated him in public were the ones planning his downfall in secret. But destiny is strange. It was this same Aquasi, the son of grace and brilliance, who would one day be reduced to a madman walking the streets, his life torn apart by the very family who should have protected him. For many years, life seemed fruitful for Mr. Ankra and his son, Aquasi. Together, they managed their businesses with wisdom and determination. Their construction company built homes and schools across Ghana, while the wine and drinks company expanded beyond borders. Customers respected their integrity, and workers loved their generosity. To the public, the Ankra family was an image of success and blessing. But in the shadows, envy was sharpening its knife. Relatives who should have been proud were instead plotting. Their hearts could not bear the sight of father and son rising together, securing what was theirs by right. Then, one evening, tragedy began to creep in silently. Mr. Ankra complained of weakness. "Aquasi, my son," he said softly, "I don't feel strong. My bones ache as if something is eating me from the inside." Worried, Aquasi rushed him to the hospital. They ran every test, checked every report, but the doctors shook their heads in confusion. "Sir, everything looks fine. Your body is strong. We cannot find anything wrong with you." Yet the man was clearly not fine. His skin grew pale, his strength left him, and each day he seemed to fade like a candle in the wind. Desperate, they traveled abroad. In London, the doctors examined him again. Nothing. In Germany, they tried advanced scans. Still no explanation. Even when he went as far as India, where medicine and healing traditions blended with science, the story was the same. "We see nothing wrong. He is healthy." But he was dying. Aquasi watched helplessly as his once strong father grew weaker by the day. His heart ached. How can all these doctors, with their machines and knowledge, see nothing? Yet I see my father slipping away before my eyes." When they returned to Ghana, Mr. Ankra's condition worsened. It was then that they turned to prophets and spiritualists. The answers came like arrows. "Your sickness is not ordinary," one prophet said. "Your family has placed a hand against you," another confirmed. "They have vowed to destroy your bloodline because of your wealth. What medicine cannot see, the spirit can reveal." Yet another added. The truth was bitter. Mr. Ankra's own family, the same people who ate with him, laughed with him, and called him brother, were the ones digging his grave. They had already taken his wife through charms, and now they were finishing what they started. But here was the hardest part. While prophets could point to the cause, none seemed able to bring the solution. Aquasi grew frustrated. "Why is it, Papa, that our prophets see but cannot heal? They can tell us the problem, but never the answer." His father, lying weak on the bed, smiled faintly. "My son, that is the burden of our land. Many can reveal, but few can redeem. It is only God who can truly deliver." Those words sank deep into Aquasi's heart. He began to understand that the battle he and his father were facing was not one of flesh and blood, but a deep spiritual war, one that wealth, medicine, or even prophets alone could not win. The sickness continued, and with each passing day, the grip of death grew stronger. But in the midst of the pain, destiny was still writing its story, one that would later bring Aquasi to the dusty streets of Tafo, where kindness awaited him in the hands of a poor kenkey seller named Okyerewaa. The sickness lingered, draining Mr. Ankra day by day, until even his voice became a whisper. He had been a man of great strength, a pillar of wealth and wisdom, but now he lay in bed, staring into the eyes of his only son. "Aquasi," he said weakly, holding his hand, "life is shorter than we think. I fought to build all this for you, but what matters most is your peace. Guard your heart, my son, for family can wound deeper than strangers." Tears burned in Aquasi's eyes. "Papa, don't talk like that. You will live. We will fight this together." But Mr. Ankra only smiled faintly, a smile heavy with unspoken truth. He knew his time was near. Before his final breath, he made sure to put his affairs in order. In the presence of lawyers and witnesses, he wrote his will. A generous man, even in death, he left small portions of land and wealth for his extended family, but the majority, his businesses, his houses, his investments, he willed to his only son. "It is his right," he declared, "for he has worked beside me faithfully. Let no one deny him what he has earned." When the will was read after his passing, the truth of his words became fire in the hearts of his relatives. Though they had received something, their greed could not accept that the lion's share went to Aquasi. Whispers began to spread. Why should he alone control the companies? Why must everything fall into his hands? Are we not family too? While Aquasi mourned his father, weeping for the man who had been both parent and friend, the family whispered against him. He buried his father with dignity, but behind the grave stood eyes burning with hatred, waiting for their chance. One of the uncles spoke in secret. "If we kill him now, people will suspect us. They will say we removed him for the property." Another replied, "Yes, his death will expose us. The town will point fingers at us immediately." Then, with dark wisdom, a cousin suggested, "Let us not kill him. Let us break his mind. Let him go mad. If he loses his senses, no one will blame us. They will say the death of his father and too much stress destroyed him. Then, when he is gone, we shall take everything." The plan was sealed. Not long after his father's burial, strange things began to happen to Aquasi. He would wake at night sweating, hearing voices whisper his name. His dreams turned into nightmares, snakes chasing him, shadows pressing on his chest. At meetings, he sometimes lost focus, speaking words that made no sense. People began to murmur, "Is he all right?" Slowly, the brilliant CEO, the son of Grace, the heir of Mr. Ankra, began to lose himself. Rumors began to spread in the business world. The young CEO is not well. Ever since his father died, he has lost himself. But behind the scenes, his own family rejoiced. Their charms were working. Their whispers in the dark had begun to bear fruit. Still, to protect their reputation, they played the role of concerned relatives. They took him from hospital to hospital, dressing their wickedness in false compassion. "Doctor, please, do something," one uncle would say loudly, pretending to be worried. "This boy is like our own son," an auntie would cry fake tears. "We are trying everything to save him," another cousin would announce to outsiders. In truth, they wanted the world to see that they had done their part. If Aquasi collapsed completely, no finger could be pointed at them. They could say, "We tried, but his father's death broke him." The doctors ran tests again and again. The results were the same. Nothing was wrong with his body, but something unseen was destroying his mind. One evening, Aquasi sat on his hospital bed, his once sharp eyes now clouded. He whispered to himself, "They think I don't know. They think I cannot see. But I see them. I see what they want." No one listened. They called it madness. The family, seeing that the hospitals could not heal him, slowly withdrew their pretense of care. "Let us leave him," one of them said. "The world will believe it was grief that drove him mad." With time, Aquasi drifted into the streets. He wandered barefoot, his fine suits replaced with rags, his brilliance hidden under dust and sorrow. People mocked him as he passed by. Children threw stones, drivers laughed, and women crossed the road to avoid him. But destiny has a way of hiding treasure in broken vessels. Before the family carried out their plan to destroy Aquasi, they sought guidance from a fetish priest deep in the forest. They wanted to be certain that once his mind was broken, no cure would ever restore him. The old priest sat before them, his eyes white with mystery, his voice deep and chilling. He threw cowries, sprinkled powder on the ground, and after a long silence he spoke. "This young man will lose his senses, yes. He will walk the streets, yes. No medicine, no prayer, no doctor can bring him back to himself, unless—" The family leaned closer. "Unless what?" they asked impatiently. The priest's eyes narrowed. "Unless he sleeps with a sane woman, a woman whose mind is clean, whose heart is pure. Only then will the chains of madness break." For a moment there was silence. Then laughter filled the room. "Hey, how can that be?" one uncle mocked. "Which sane woman will allow herself to lie with a madman?" Another auntie scoffed. "Such a thing will never happen. The boy's fate is sealed," a cousin declared. They left the shrine that day, satisfied that their plan was unshakable. To them, Aquasi's madness would last until his final breath. And so, they carried out their wickedness. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The once brilliant CEO wandered the streets like a shadow of his former self. For 2 years, he drifted from town to town, barefoot, hungry, muttering to himself. People threw stones at him, mocked him and called him names. Some said, "That one has been cursed." Others laughed, "He is paying for his father's sins." But no one knew the truth, that greed and witchcraft had pushed him into madness. Then, one hot afternoon in Tafo, destiny unfolded. Aquasi staggered down a dusty road, his clothes torn, his hair tangled like a nest. Hunger twisted his stomach. He was weak, almost collapsing, when the smell of steaming kenkey touched his nose. By the roadside sat a young woman, her hands busy unwrapping balls of kenkey for customers. Her name was Okyerewaa, a poor seller, but rich in kindness. As he drew closer, people hissed, "Hey, the madman is coming!" "Madman, go away!" children shouted, picking up stones, but Okyerewaa raised her hand. "Stop! Don't throw anything at him!" She looked into his tired eyes, and instead of madness, she saw pain. Without hesitation, she picked a ball of kenkey, added pepper, and handed it to him. "Here, eat," she said softly. For the first time in years, Aquasi's lips trembled as though he wanted to speak. He stared at her, and for a brief moment, clarity flickered in his eyes. With Aquasi wandering in madness and his father buried, the family wasted no time. They gathered like vultures around a carcass and took over his inheritance. The will that gave Aquasi the majority of his father's wealth was ignored. In their eyes, he was no longer capable of running anything, and so they justified their theft. One uncle declared boldly, "He is mad. Can a madman run companies? Let us take charge for the sake of the businesses." Soon, every member of the family placed their hands where they had no right. They brought in their educated sons and daughters, forcing them into top positions. One cousin became CEO, another took over finance, another claimed HR, and another forced her way into administration. In the beginning, it looked organized. They wore fine suits, sat in air-conditioned offices, and pretended to lead. But greed does not unite, it divides. Within just a few months, cracks began to show. One morning, the self-appointed CEO slammed the boardroom table. "Why must I answer to anyone? I am the leader here." The accountant, his cousin, stood and shouted, "Without me, your so-called leadership is useless. I control the money." Another cousin in HR sneered, "Both of you are nothing without me. I decide who stays and who goes. I can fire the whole staff if I wish." And, true to her words, they began to sack workers who had served the company faithfully under Mr. Ankra and Aquasi. Secretaries, accountants, project supervisors. One by one they were thrown out and replaced with cousins and in-laws. But family blood could not hide selfish ambition. Soon, jealousy spread like fire. At home, arguments spilled into the living room. Aunties shouted at uncles, cousins fought each other, children insulted elders. "Why should your daughter be CEO while my son is left with nothing?" one woman screamed. Another shouted back, "If your son was qualified, he would be there. Don't bring your bitterness here." The once respectable Ankra family house turned into a battlefield. Meetings ended with shouting matches. Relatives who used to eat from the same pot now ate in separate corners, suspecting poison in each other's food. And the companies? They began to collapse. Projects stalled, workers left, investors withdrew. Clients who had trusted the Ankra name now shook their heads in disappointment. "Since the young man went mad, this family has destroyed everything," they whispered. Meanwhile, the real heir, the one meant to protect his father's legacy, wandered barefoot in the streets of Tafo, eating from the hands of a poor kenkey seller. The same family that had plotted his downfall was now tearing itself apart, blinded by greed. And though Okyerewaa did not know the details, she often wondered why the madman's eyes sometimes carried a depth of sorrow no ordinary wanderer could hold. The bond between Okyerewaa and the madman grew in ways no one could explain. At first, She had only fed him by the roadside. But as days turned into weeks and weeks into months, her heart began to stretch beyond food. One night, she found him shivering in the cold under a mango tree near their rented house. Pity filled her eyes. Quietly, she whispered, "Follow me." She led him to their compound and allowed him to sleep on the small porch outside their home. From then on, Aquasi would sometimes rest there. Other nights, his wandering spirit carried him back to the streets. Yet each morning, when Okyerewaa went looking for him, she always found him, tired, dusty, but alive. She would hand him kenkey and water and with patience help him eat. Her mother, Afia, was not pleased. One evening she confronted her daughter. "Okyerewaa, why do you bring this madman so close? What if he attacks you one day? Madness is unpredictable." But Okyerewaa shook her head gently. "Mame, he is different. Have you seen him fight? Have you seen him insult anyone? He is humble, quiet. His madness is not violent." Still her mother frowned, whispering under her breath, "Love has made you blind, my daughter. Be careful." But Okyerewaa's compassion was stronger than fear. At times, she would even gather some of the town boys, pressing coins into their hands. "Please help me. Capture him and hold him. I want him bathed." The boys, amused at her stubbornness, would chase Aquasi, laughing and joking as they dragged him to the stream. He never resisted much. He would stand quietly, his eyes distant, as the boys poured water over his body. When the dirt was washed away, he looked less like a beggar and more like a lost soul in need of healing. Okyerewaa would then bring second-hand clothes she had saved from the market. Simple shirts, trousers, sometimes even sandals. She would dress him with her own hands, saying softly, "At least you will look human again." The townspeople were baffled. "Hey, what kind of love is this? How can a young woman waste time on a mad man? Does she think she can change him? Maybe the madness will rub off on her," others whispered with scorn. But Okyerewaa ignored them. In her heart, she saw something no one else could see. There was a gentleness in his eyes whenever she fed him, a quietness in his spirit that set him apart from other madmen. And though he rarely spoke, there were moments when his lips trembled, as if words were locked inside, waiting for the right key to set them free. Night after night, she watched over him. Day after day, she clothed him, fed him, and gave him dignity. What the world despised, she chose to embrace. In the land of Tafo, destiny is still unfolding. Aquasi, once the pride of his father, now sits at the mercy of fate. His family, blinded by greed, are fighting each other, tearing apart the very empire they stole. But what will become of them? Will their wickedness return to destroy them, or will justice find another way? And what of Okyerewaa, the humble kenkey seller whose heart of kindness has given dignity to a man the world calls mad? Could her compassion be the key to unlocking Aquasi's hidden destiny? Could a miracle rise from dust and ashes, bringing light into both their lives? As we await the final episode of this powerful tale, the questions remain. Will Aquasi's mind be restored? Will Okyerewaa's life be forever changed? Can love and mercy defeat greed and wickedness? Only time and destiny will tell. This is your favorite channel, Ananse Web of Tales, where stories inspire, teach, and open our eyes. If you have enjoyed this journey, kindly subscribe, share this story with friends and family, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. And may you, our dear viewers, be delivered from every wicked family plot, and may goodness and mercy never leave your home. Amen.